All right, 3, 2, 1, and we're going. Welcome, BowTiedBULLY. Thanks for jumping on to Daily Degens, BowTiedBarbery, and looking to have a conversation. Not sure where we'll go. Have a couple talking points, but before we dive in, I want to mention your Substack. So your Substack so far is covered traveling and cooking. Where do you kind of see your Substack going?
Yep. So those are pretty much the two topics I've covered in the majority of my writing so far. I think it's probably going to stay along the line. I was kind of thinking it was going to kind of delve into one or the other, but it seems kind of across the board feedback has been pretty even on what people want to see. So I'm going to keep driving both of those home. I'm hoping to create some more in-depth cooking guides and some more in-depth point stuff just to kind of provide some more detailed research for people there, because I know there's a bunch of stuff on everything, but I don't think it's as focused as I think a lot of people want. So I'm trying to just get down to the simple, detailed nitty-gritty of so people can actually just start having actionable stuff off the top there. So that's really my goals there, to try to make it it's easy for people to find in one place and not have to weave through all the bullshit.
Actionable advice and getting to the point.
Yep, for sure. There's one thing I hate. It's going down an entire list of things to find the one thing I was looking for at the bottom.
For listeners not familiar, Bully's cooking Substack covered equipment, recipes, different kinds of pans, different ways to cook meats versus vegetables. It was quite broad and kind of head to toe, nose to tail in your kitchen, no pun intended. So I'm kind of curious will you kind of get specific? For example, you mentioned cooking with a cast iron skillet, and you mentioned the art of using a grill as the happy medium for meat. So I'm just trying to get a picture in my mind of what kind of content to see coming down in the Substack.
Yeah, so I think you kind of hit the kind of where I'm going in the immediate future with it being summer for sure. The grilling, I think, is one of the things that I think is one of the easier and harder ways to cook things. The more in depth you go into it, it can get really specific and really hard to use it. But I think a lot of people are afraid of it, and they don't need to be. It's the easiest way you can cook some things, and it hides a lot of things that you can do, but it makes it easier to make bulk stuff, which is great for summertime. We just have a bunch of meal prep things to do. So I'm hoping to go down some grilling, either meal prep ideas or some just grilling techniques, things like that, just because I think that's something that could benefit a lot of people there. Because I think mass making food makes things a lot easier for people, because people, I think, across the board, they seemingly don't enjoy cooking as much as a lot of people do. So whatever makes it easier for them to get the good stuff in their diet, I think I can help out with.
It does seem to be a function of time, doesn't it? Where we all want to be healthy or eat certain foods, but there's a matter of convenience and,
for sure,
of course, cost. But time is also a stickler.
For sure, and that's one of the nice parts about the grill is, like, depending on what size, even if you have a smaller one, you can cook easily enough for a week in about 30-40 minutes, depending on what you're making there. And I think it doesn't take a lot to make something on the grill taste really freaking good. And if I can help some people out with that, I think they'll be more adept to try to go to the next level and say, hey, made this, it's pretty good. What else can I do this? And then especially as we get into the next parts of the year, as they get forced indoors, depending on where you are, you can start exploring a little bit more in your actual kitchen.
Right. But for now, we're in barbecue season. We're in grilling season.
Exactly.
You mentioned one of your tweets, looking to bring up an e-commerce site by the end of June. Are you willing to get specific in what you're trying to sell or how that works with your brand that's growing? For example, I mean, you're knowledgeable in cooking and traveling. So, for example, would you be selling something related to recipes or some action in the kitchen?
Yeah, that's kind of the thought process I was going down. I'm still trying to decide whether or not it's going to be more of a kind of a what do you call it, an info type product, or if it's going to be an actual physical product. That's still kind of my main decision right now. I have the kind of basis in terms of strategy I want to use, kind of the layout and kind of the path I want to go down. It's more or less what the actual product itself is going to be. And I think that's what I'm going to try to decide, hopefully over this weekend, and not to get too caught up in the paralysis by analysis type item there. The biggest thing I know is getting started and trying things out. You won't know if it works until you get in there. So that's really kind of what I'm trying to get out.
Only one way to find out.
Exactly. And if it fails, it fails. I mean, I think there's too many people who are afraid to to go out there and not have something work, or they give up after like a month because it's not working. I mean, no one wants to sink their time, but you're not going to know unless you go out there. And if you fail, I mean, you tried. I mean, it's not enough at some points, but I mean, you got to do it to do it. And if you never do it, you'll never know if it worked or not. And you learn something either way.
Absolutely. Going into, I think it was maybe Ox's live stream the other day. Someone asked, getting your first sale. He's like, once you've sold, you've made the first couple of sales, you realize, wow, some strangers on the internet just bought my shit. And all the marketing and the sales and the web design, supply chain logistics, it actually works. This can be done and this can be scaled.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, even if you take it down, even outside of the e-commerce world, like I think of the Substack, I see some like the people who are subscribing or the people who are engaging with stuff I'm writing on there. And that's just content among a bunch of anonymous people on the internet. But that's even kind of cool to see, like, hey, people are actually interested in what I have to say. People are actually interested in kind of what I'm putting out as like a product in quote unquote kind of words that I'm putting out there. So I mean, even from that perspective, you can see it. It's kind of addicting how you kind of get that out there and you just want to provide more stuff for people. And I know once you get shifted to e-commerce and there's even monetary behind it, I mean, that's even going to be even further in there for sure. I think it's a motivating factor to see people actually want what you are putting out there, and to have that kind of translate directly into your bank account is even more fulfilling.
I think we're on the same page there. It's a little addicting when you're putting out content, free information, value, actionable advice. You're putting all this time in, yet almost getting off on people who are using it and interacting with it and reading it and appreciating what you're providing for them.
For sure. And like, there's no guarantee that they were going to like it when you put it out there. I don't know about you when you start putting stuff out there, but I know for myself, I'm definitely not a natural writer per se. I've never kind of put stuff out there in the kind of a written format like this, in a blog format or anything like that. So, I mean, I was kind of expecting nobody to even read it at all. And then when people started to, I was like, this is really cool that we have a community that's willing to kind of explore everyone's topics and not just either ignore it or jump down people's throat if there's something they don't like. They actually are going to give you some feedback and give you some information to work off of. So I thought that was a really cool thing when we started kind of getting the jungle up and running.
Absolutely. And I mean, you were there, let's say early, but time moves fast in the jungle. So let's say Clown Hatton was April 27th. Mm-hmm. And then early May, I think I made an account, and you had already had an account. I remember this because I was getting confused when you type in BowTiedB.
Yeah.
Bull, you get bull, bulldog, and bully. And for a while, I was mixing up you, bully, and bulldog. And I'm like, okay, two of those are not bull, but I can't. And I know they both eat meat, and they work online, and it's kind of cool to see this kind of this unraveling. So how did you get here? Like, two strangers having a conversation, animal avatar. Like, how did you get here to almost, you're going to set up an e-com store, got a Substack. Like, what was that inflection point you got into the BowTied community?
Yeah. So I think the first time I came across what was Wall Street Pillybush at the time, as we know it's BowTiedBULLY. First time I came across him was probably back like 6 or 7 years ago. I was just in college, kind of doing as college kids do when they're kind of thinking of jobs, and just Googling about investment banking money and it's like the salaries that come along with it. And of course, a few of his articles early on were exactly that topic. And then kind of found his site and was popping around and just got really intrigued by all the stuff he was putting out there. Started following him on Twitter, just kind of following everything that he was kind of putting out there. And the more stuff that came, especially recently, was just kind of connecting the dots. And the more I even got into crypto after that as well, the more his stuff just started even making more sense from a philosophical standpoint, just about how we think about traditional financial systems, how people interact with each other. It just started just really even hitting home the more I got into just the professional world, and just out of just kind of, I guess, the pre-professional world that I was in, and you just kind of see all these different things lining up and propaganda and all this different real life scenarios. And it just kind of, when it morphed into what it became over the past year, it just really was just a community that I knew I wanted to be a part of and connect with. And there's just so many smart people with different viewpoints. It's just, how could you not want to just get involved with these people?
Right. Have you seen offline or online a group like this where you have, let's say, almost this filter where everyone's about grinding and producing content and getting after it? Have you experienced anything like this online or offline?
So the closest I come from like a group of people, like all kind of with like the same mentality or goal or kind of destination. Like I was a college athlete, and that was kind of the closest environment I had to that, which is still very different. It's not necessarily, there's still, from that perspective, everybody kind of has their own unique thing they're striving for. It might not necessarily all kind of align. From a team perspective, it does, but not necessarily the individual person. This is the first time where I've kind of seen all these different people who have their own goals, but they all relate to kind of the same thing. And they're all kind of made up of the same characteristics, but all come from different walks of life, which that part is very similar to being on an athletics team, is that you have all these different people from different walks of life. But I think this is definitely a unique thing, especially from an online community. And I think, especially us being anonymous, I think a lot of times people take I can't even say that word, being anonymous, as something that they can use to say like negative things about people or do negative things, or it just kind of troll people, but not in the way that we kind of see that's in kind of a positive way, I would say, in our community. I think a lot of times it's just these anonymous people just don't have the backbone to say stuff, whereas in our community, we are anonymous for a purpose, and we're trying to do good, and we're trying to produce things and create an actual community instead of just being a bunch of jokers on the internet who just want to yell at like 12-year-olds.
It almost feels like that's how it started. And when BowTied took his whole like Substack, offline, Wall Street Playboys, people who, I mean, my background, I did a semester in downtown Manhattan. Like that was me following BTB or Wall Street Playboys, like going to do investment banking and I'm going to do this year by year playbook. And then I'm like, no. Ironically, I discovered Bitcoin in New York when there were like 2 Bitcoin ATMs in Manhattan. Had to walk an hour to find one. Of course, now there's hundreds, and it's like realizing almost, yes, if I can change my mind, that I'm curious 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what will I be so sure of today that I'll realize wasn't true at all?
For sure. And I think being able to, some people think that they need to think the same way for so long, and that changing your mind shows that you were wrong or a weakness or something like that, which can't be farther from the truth. We see BowTiedBULLY kind of mention that he might be writing differently, not writing differently, but he might be having a different viewpoint or change his kind of view on something, and he's very open about doing it. And he doesn't take that as being a negative thing, which he shouldn't. It's not negative. You need to adapt, you need to evolve. And some people are so afraid to do that. They think that it's a sign of weakness, when it really is kind of honestly strength, because you're acknowledging that things change over time and you need to be able to adapt to it. Because I think adaptability is probably one of the most underrated but most important traits that somebody can have to succeed in whatever they're doing.
If you could go back, and listeners unfamiliar, your background is in like B2B sales, like that's what you kind of do for a living, give or take.
Yeah, give or take. Yeah, that's
SaaS
essentially
Sales.
kind of around it. Yeah.
If you could go back to, let's say, the early 2010s, wherever you were, and how old you were exactly isn't as important as, what would you do differently? The mindset you have now, the perspective you have now, what's something you would do differently? Hindsight's 2020 or 2021, if you want to call it.
Yeah, so that's a really good one. I think at that time I probably would not be as kind of warped in the idea that you need to follow like a certain path that people find acceptable to get success. So I think at least in the United States, I know there's people from all over the place in the jungle. So at least in the United States, like the typical thing that they bring you up to believe is you need to go through middle school, go through high school, get your good grades, don't piss anyone off, go to college, and come out, just any job, just get a job, make some money, and just kind of go about your life that way. And that's kind of the way that people think of success, at least in America, is basically like you do those things, you do well in school, you get a good job, and that's all you need to do. When in reality, that doesn't really kind of get you ahead anywhere. It doesn't get you to achieve a lot of things that most people want, but most people aren't willing to do the things that they need to because they're not taught that they have to do it. They're taught that they have to basically go through life on this one set plan, accept the outcomes of it, and then that's really the best you're going to get. And if I were thinking back then, I would think, okay, what can I do to make this path a little bit more unique? What can I do to really go above what other people are doing to set myself even more ahead later down the road so that I have these different opportunities? So whether that be exposing myself to more interaction with sales roles, taking up more initiative online, and really getting into the online sales type of environment that really wasn't as pertinent as it is now back then, getting ahead that way. It was really just kind of thinking about how can I do things in a better way than people aren't thinking of, and utilizing the internet to the best of its abilities. Then obviously also, investing in Bitcoin and Ethereum back then. Well, I guess not Ethereum, but Bitcoin for sure.
Right. So actually, it's funny you mentioned a little tangent of Bitcoin, Ethereum, maybe not Ethereum. One of your tweets mentioned two fears. First one, not accumulating enough Bitcoin. And the second one was, I forget, but it was some kind of like satire. In the hype Ethereum flippening, of course, BowTiedBULLY hyping Ethereum, and then eventually DeFi. Where do you kind of stand in that proof of work, proof of stake debate, and the Elon energy FUD and everything going on? Is the majority of your percentage-wise more Bitcoin or more Ethereum? Well, at least let's start there. See where you stand.
Oh, is my internet there? I think I might have lost you there for a second.
Yeah, I hear you.
There you go. Okay. Yeah, I think I might have.
Percentage-wise, are you more Bitcoin?
I heard I think most of the question. Me, I am definitely more Ethereum percentage-wise now after the past year for sure. I was about even probably for a while. Obviously, with kind of things, kind of how they've gone. I think I've also invested more into Ethereum over the past year than into Bitcoin. But Ethereum is really what got me into crypto. When I did get into crypto, I remember reading through things and kind of knowing what Bitcoin was for a while, not necessarily the intricacies of it, but I'd heard of it and the zeitgeist and what have you there. And when I kind of the year
zeitgeist,
yeah,
that's a whole other stage.
Yeah, and so like I kind of would keep an eye on it, kind of see what it was, not really know too much about crypto. But when the year I actually took the plunge and invested into crypto, I remember reading about Ethereum for the first time, and kind of it just clicked to me as like this could change things in ways that is well beyond just being an online currency that most people consider. Still, in today, probably consider most of these things. But when I remember first reading about Ethereum and smart contracts and all of that, and I was just like, that same day is when I invested in crypto for the first time. I was like, this is going to change things, and this is going to be something that's not just going to live on the internet in a small subset of people. Like this is going to be something. So that was really what kind of pushed me there. Then obviously made sure I was exposed to Bitcoin and what have you there.
Programmable money.
Hey, Bully.
Sponge.
Yo, what's up, man?
Welcome, Sponge.
Oh, hi.
Sponge.
Hey, yo.
It's not like I haven't talked to you the last like 4 days. I almost missed you.
I know. Me too. If we're apart for more than like an hour at a time, I start getting nervous. Hey, Bully, I got a question for you, man. What's your take on the whole Link Marine situation? Because, I mean, I've been looking at the various forms of crypto in terms of like levels of abstraction and like the possibility for scaling. And I'm not going to lie. I mean, after I listened to a few podcasts with Sergey Nazarov, and I've been reading through part of their white paper. And, well, the parts of it that I understood seemed pretty good. I I mean, do you think that there's an argument for the relative size of the market for different cryptocurrencies? As you move away from, say, like gold to Ethereum being the equivalent of the digital finance to Link, which I mean, in theory, could be the equivalent of like digital media.
Yeah. So to me, like the way I always think about the different altcoins, because there's thousands of them at this point, I always try to think of what the actual use case is going to be, how it fits into kind of the grander scheme of things. And when I say the grander scheme of things, I kind of think of Ethereum and Web like 3.0 and that kind of thing, because I think at this point that's kind of the mainstay of how we kind of consider those things, and like how do these other things fit into that. So I don't think it's going to ever be bigger than like Ethereum. I think it can grow in kind of alongside it, but from an overall like valuation or market cap standpoint, or however you want to kind of think of it, I think that Link itself, there are competitors, but I think one, there's such a loyal following behind the Link with the Link Marines and everything like that. But I don't know how it would have to take something, I think, revolutionary to a degree to kind of usurp.
They're ready for war, boy.
Yeah, exactly. War. So I think it's going to have to be some technology that just you can't even kind of say that there's any chance that it's even in the same league. But I just think that there's such a first mover advantage there as well. And there's been no issues with what they have to do. So, I mean, it's not like it's a bad product as it is. So, and I feel like there's always some new partnership or something that's coming out with them there. So, I mean, I think that there's plenty of room for it, because I don't think it's trying to do something that a more well-established like altcoin is trying to do. It's not like a Bitcoin Cash going after Bitcoin or something like that. Like this is its own kind of section of Web 3.0. It's basically the best in class as of right now of what it's doing in terms of popularity and kind of adoption. So I don't see it going anywhere at this point. I mean, regardless of price and what's going on with that kind of whole FUD and all that stuff. But I think that I think it's very possible that it grows the same way that Ethereum would grow.
Yeah, that'll be pretty good, man. I mean, I want to see what happens between that and like, I mean, it depends. Like if it starts getting celebrity backing, that'd be really funny. Like imagine if it starts to pop the way Doge did, because I'm invested a little bit in Doge right now. And that's just because I have like a good 5% of my money that I like to put.
Oh, Sponge.
Wait.
Saying you invest in Doge is like saying you got a little Coke habit on the side. That,
no.
Only certain friends you talk about.
Okay, maybe, but also hear me out. Okay. So no, there's like this hypothesis I've had for a while now, which is that, whenever Elon Musk starts tweeting about something, I just throw money at it. So when Elon started freaking out about the price of Tesla, I sold Tesla. When he said it was a good idea again, I bought that. When, back when he started tweeting about GME, I bought GME. When he said that GME wasn't any good, I sold GME. So far, my Elon Musk tweet fund is actually up 400% year over year. I'm just saying, like, there's an argument there.
Can we put that into like an NFT / like smart contract and just auto DCA into a Elon Musk?
I'm just saying,
something tweet fund.
There's an entire investment thesis you could make off of just Elon Musk's whims, and you might actually make money off of it.
So, question with Sponge and Bully both here. So, Sponge, you have, I believe, is it 3 citizenships? United States, Greece, and somewhere else.
That's correct. Yeah, Bahamas too.
And Bully, your Substack talks about traveling, using airline points to almost travel for free. How has traveling kind of changed in this post-COVID world? Like, has your strategy or what you want to do in terms of travel changed?
So for me, in terms of what I want to do, it hasn't changed. I more or less am from a destination standpoint, just reviewing the individual countries, guidelines around COVID and all that stuff. But from a strategy of points and stuff, that's where I think it gets a little bit interesting, because all these different ways that you can benefit off of points and all these different ways that you can benefit off of redemptions, it's very airline or hotel specific. And as you start going into these partner airlines, you go into these different kind of nuances behind these different charts. They obviously belong to different countries. So countries like Turkish Airlines, one of the most highly frequented airlines that's out there was shut down for a large portion of the past year and a half, more than most other places because of the way COVID affected them. So there's certain partners or certain airlines that you might not want to investigate or gain points in from different credit cards that are major redemption partners of that airline because of the way that the routes have shut down, where it's a route network that was traditionally rather large and easy to use points, not so much anymore. So now you got to refocus your effort elsewhere on how you're going to allocate your points and how you're going to kind of move things there. So that's kind of more of an intricate way of kind of thinking about the points there. But I think that's something that as you start getting into the hobby, you'll realize that as the route network shrinks, you have to start rethinking about where you're going to use your points on. And then that's going to naturally bring you to kind of these different avenues. And one of the biggest things that's occurred too is that with these different either places, the way the economy was hit, you could see it in the different offerings that these credit cards are kind of putting forth right now. We've been seeing some of the biggest bonuses that we've seen in the past probably 5 or 6 years occur in the past probably 6 months. And most people would probably think that's a good thing, but it's really not, because you're basically seeing that translate to an increase in the redemption costs of a lot of things. So you're seeing the inflation that you're seeing in the economy trickle down even to the points world. So there's a lot of big bonuses out there, which would normally be an exciting thing. It's kind of, to me, just signaling things are going to get a little bit harder to get value out of in the points world in the future.
The credit card thing is super interesting. You just brought up there. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal like a couple weeks back, I think, that was talking about how credit card companies were all freaking out because they're about to become unprofitable because of how many Americans have paid off their credit card debt during COVID, ironically, right? So that's interesting. I mean, now you said that was a bad thing. Could you elaborate on that? I'm not sure I understand. I mean, I would have thought that people getting out of debt is good, even if it means fewer redemptions, right? Because that's like a net win in terms of capital preserved.
Right. So that's a good thing. So when I say it's a bad thing, I mean it's a bad thing from a airline loyalty program perspective or loyalty perspective. Yeah, because whenever you see these big bonuses from the credit card, because these credit cards have to buy those points from those different avenues. Like that's how they kind of gain them in the first place. They're not just necessarily gifted them or are able to kind of get them for a discount. Like they're paying for those things to offer as part of their credit cards in the hope that people will use those credit cards. They'll get the transaction money from it, and then they'll also get the late fees potentially. So if you're seeing increases in those as people pay off debt, that means that what they're paying for those miles is either going down or they're getting it for the same price, but they know they're not going to be worth as much. And that's just going to signal to me that these airlines and these different hotels, they plan on raising those redemptions because they're not going to just give all these things out at a lower price if they're not going to make it, if they're going to hurt themselves even more on the back end. So, and we've seen this directly. One of the examples is Delta. Delta over the past year has increased specifically European one-way redemptions in business class. Used to be 65,000 one way. It's all the way up at 105,000. So, I mean, you've got a almost 50% increase there, but the credit cards have also increased. So you're getting more miles in your credit cards, but it takes way more to actually use those miles.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want to make a comment, and this is a little bit more generally about airlines and travel as a whole. So something really interesting is like when this whole COVID business happened, this is maybe March of 2019. It was 2020, March 2020. I immediately invested a stupid amount of money into airlines. And I did that on purpose because of an investment thesis that basically went along the lines of like, I'm pretty sure people are still going to be flying, just not necessarily as much, right? Fortunately, that investment has paid off. Pretty much everything I invested in has doubled since then. Now, granted, given inflation, that maybe is only worth half as much as the nominal value, but still, it's something. What was interesting about it, though, when I was following this is I think it's actually still undervalued, which is kind of remarkable because the price has remained relatively steady in the stock for about the past 4 months, despite the fact that the vaccine's out. And if you actually look at the flight numbers as reported by TSA, what's really funny, because this all relates back to something Bull tweeted too, with regard to how we're going to see a massive rise in inflation in the summer because of the increase in the velocity of money.
Right. Supply went vertical. Now velocity is going vertical.
Exactly right. Yeah. So what's remarkable is that literally just in the last 2 weeks, we saw a spike over 40% in airline passengers being reported by TSA. So, but the price and the stock hasn't reflected that at all. So, just a heads up, this is not investment advice, but I am really excited about what's about to happen in the Q2 earnings report for some of these airlines, because as far as travel is concerned, I think people are actually starting to do it again.
Yeah, I think I read that 2021 is supposed to be even higher than 2019.
Oh
in
yeah,
terms of travel.
I believe that 100%. People have pent up demand. That's going to be a big deal.
Looking back at history, when the Spanish flu ended in like 1920-ish, I mean, they call it a decade of the Roaring '20s, but like people went nuts relative to the time. Like people let loose, and
it's human nature at that point. I mean, and it's not even human nature. It's kind of animal nature at that point. I mean, you put something where someone can't have it anymore that they're used to having. As soon as they can have it again, they're going to go above what they were before. Like, it's just how many times do you see people who are maybe like overweight or what have you? They kind of starve themselves to get down to a certain weight. They're looking good. As soon as they can start having pizza again, they're gaining more weight than they did before. I mean, that's one of the directly translatable things. It's just a natural human nature that's going to be translated across their entire life.
I feel you, man. This is why Catholic girls are the freaks. I swear to God. Okay. We all know.
This is from the guy who'd pick up chicks at BLM protests. So your mileage may vary.
They were freaks too. Are you kidding me? I was having a great time. Okay, in both cases. Okay, they were pressed like, oh no. The Catholic girls were like, no. Jesus said you can't have a guy. Okay. All right. Wait till she goes to college, and then and then the BLM protest. It's like also the same thing. Oh no, you're not allowed to actually go with the guys that have real testosterone. One shows up, it's fair game.
Bully question. Back to your cooking. So I was an idea for my own Substack was kind of a daily, or in the case of lifting, let's say you're doing a push-pull leg, you're doing, let's say, 5 days a week, is putting up Substacks and then scheduling them for later to publish on, let's say, that Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and having a workout recommended, like diet, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and maybe some other stuff like meditations. But carried away here in your cooking, kind of food for thought, no pun intended, is you publishing on different days, like, hey, here's your meal for today. Like, here's your dinner, here's your recipe, here's how you cook it, ingredients, some photos, variations, and like that's something people, hey, what am I doing for dinner? I need to check my inbox and see what Bully told me to eat today.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome idea, and that was actually something I was thinking of. I'm actually going on a trip here in a little bit, but I was hoping, like, after I got back from that and I got more on because I was kind of in a cutting phase at that point, and quite honestly, nobody really wants to see my boring cutting meals at that point. They're not going to necessarily want to see a bunch of chicken and rice and stuff like that. Not that it's not integral, but I mean, from a content perspective, there's only so much you can do to make that a little bit.
It's not food porn.
Up there. Exactly. But once we can kind of get back into doing like the not dirty meals, but things that are a little bit more lively and a little bit more kind of spiced up there. That's actually something I was thinking about doing to some degree, kind of a little bit similar. But like, I think it's a great idea because I think a lot of times, I know I do this, I'll kind of think, what do I want to have tomorrow? Or what do I want to have the next day? And I'll be scrolling through Instagram or Twitter or something like that. And I'll see something like, how can I make this healthy? Well, I'll do it. Now, maybe some other people want to see that and maybe I could throw that in there. So I think that's something interesting because I think a lot of people just either think of good or bad foods as opposed to how can I make that unhealthy meal into a healthier version that tastes just as good.
Fortunately, no magic pills. There's always a trade-off.
I know, but you can make some stuff that's pretty dang good. That's still healthy for you, which I don't.
What are most and it's hard to see what the audience is without collecting data over time, but and of course semi-anonymous is. What do you see as a typical piece they're missing in someone who's reading your Substack or just in the BowTied community? What's the number one or common hole they need to plug in their diet, in the cooking?
I think it's thinking that one food group or one type of thing needs to be eliminated for their body to kind of react to kind of functioning properly. Now, I know there's a lot of things like a typical carnivore diet. It's probably going to be one of the better things that you can do. But I think most people just starting out, or most people just getting into what they need to do from a fitness and from a nutritional standpoint, they're not going to be able to make the leap going right from their daily thing into a full carnivore diet, as optimal as that would be. So I think, but I think too, they think that, okay, there's no way I can cut out all these carbs. There's no way I can do that, and they just don't even try to kind of.
You can totally do it. You can totally do it. Just power through the shits, man. You got it.
You can.
You can. Most people don't want to.
It's not so easy.
No. You just grit through that stuff with a smile on your face. You enjoy it. It's a good time.
What Bull mentioned is sugar addicting. Well, I replied with, I like to quote Nissan Taleb, author of Black Swan. He goes, carbohydrates, heroin, and monthly salaries are the 3 worst addictions. And this carb, we love our pastas, our pizzas, our bagels. Whether from New York, California, we eat carbs. And getting over it is I don't crave carbs anymore. But it took me years to get to that point where I don't want sugar. I want steak.
Exactly. And I think it's not everyone's fault too, because there's so much information that's been coming out since like the 1950s that had a certain way that people had to eat, and you grow up not really knowing that. You're 5 or 6 years old, you only know what your parents are going to put out on the table for you. And if they've been putting out a bunch of carbs, a bunch of processed foods, like that's all you're used to and that's all you know. And I still talk to my own parents, and the amount of misinformation they still have on
well, I hope you still talk to your parents, but
Let's hope they still talk to you after they find out that you were part of our Degen Island Twitter.
Oh yeah.
That's a whole other story.
Right.
But like, it's just the misinformation around some stuff, and it's not that it's their fault. There just wasn't the information at the time, but the information's there now, and I think people are just stuck in the way that they grew up in terms of the amount of the way that they ate, that they think that has to be the right way because that's how their parents taught them. Where for a lot of things in life that may be true, but food's definitely not the way for that. I mean, you need to understand how your own body works, how the general body works optimally, and kind of mend those two things together to figure out what works for you.
Bully, I have a question related to that. I know that I think we're all in agreement here about getting more towards a meat and low carb diet being ideal. How do you feel about including some carbs? Like right now, I'm eating some quinoa. Is that something that is like?
Hold up, guys. I need to go find Sponge's Twitter account and block him.
What, are you kidding me? It's good. Hey, it comes from Peru, just like the ayahuasca. All right.
Oh, hey, did I say quinoa? I meant can't get my plants right.
No, but like there have to be. I mean, I imagine like in the scope of carbs that you could eat, right? There's a hierarchy, right? If you had to add a few in just to get the normies on board, which ones would you go for?
Yeah, and so I guess I'll say I'm not like completely anti-carb, because I think that there's, especially for fueling a workout, you definitely need those. So it's definitely, I'm not full carnivore for sure. I definitely have carbs in my diet, but I definitely don't have them nearly as high as they used to be, just because I know that my own body I felt way better when I kind of decreased them a bit. But I'd say like if you have rice and potatoes, I mean, that's the typical like bodybuilder type thing where like those are the only carbs that you can have. But that's, to me, it's like those are going to digest better than most carbs you're going to have. They're not going to stick around as much. They're more flexible in terms of what you can do with them than some sort of processed bagel or something like that you kind of are just going to load up with some jam or something along those lines. But I mean, you can do a lot with some potatoes and some rice and even some sourdough toast, because of just the lower amount of ingredients that you can put into it. I mean, it's better. It's way better than your processed white bread or something like that. And you basically, I think, have like 4 or 5 ingredients in it, and you get some natural sourdough in there. You can kind of make yourself some good meals and pair that with your protein throughout the day, and you can make some pretty good stuff with that.
Sounds good to me, man.
Go ahead, Switch.
What? I can go ahead. All right, cool. So,
Sponge, by the way, I just loved how you popped in. It was like,
okay, dude,
run,
you post.
I want to get to this.
No, Barbara, you posted the studio link.
Yeah, I'm still figuring out StreamYard.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later. Yeah. But there's a way so you can make this video like as it is right now. Go direct to your Twitter and like be like live like this.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I'll walk you through it. But I mean, as long as it's recording, it shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, dude, of course, I'd love to come hang out with you guys. I mean, I think Bully, you and I were DMing a few days ago too, right?
Yes, yeah, we were.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna get you onto the podcast too because that's gonna be dope.
Sounds good.
But, yeah, man. So tell me something then. With regard to lifting, I want to bring this back to there. What exactly would you do if you are trying to bulk, but you're also going on the low carb route? Is there anything you can do to mitigate the stress that would otherwise put on you?
Yeah, that's a tough one because I mean, carbs in themselves. I mean, there's two ways to look at it. You have like the typical like day-to-day diet of people who aren't necessarily trying to get big or bulk or anything like that. They're trying to be healthy people, where I think it's a little bit easier to keep the carbs low because you just don't need as much. Even if you are working out, your body just doesn't need to optimize them there. Once you start trying to put on some serious mass or get into the competitive realm like Ox's, it's really hard to get to that higher level of true like lean mass that you're putting on without adding some carbs. Reason for that is it's a lot easier on your digestion and just your overall kind of well-being just to load in a bunch of rice into a meal as opposed to adding in a double portion of meat, just because your body's it is hard to digest protein. And you're just not going to also get as much benefit out of that much protein at that high of levels that you would get if you added some carbs in there, because carbs are just naturally protein sparing. You're going to optimize more of your protein if you have some more carbs in there. And as you get higher in that protein count and that calorie count, that's going to matter a lot more as you try to build that mass up. So if you're really trying to put on some serious mass and from like a bodybuilder perspective, there's anomalies out there, but it's really hard to really kind of do that from a low carb perspective. But if you're trying to just build a little bit of muscle or not necessarily be competitive or be a mass monster by any means, I think you could definitely do it from a not necessarily keto style, but if you time your carbs in a certain way around your workouts and get the most out of them from that perspective and kind of up your protein and fats outside of that, I think you can definitely do that. It's kind of what's that line you're trying to reach in terms of how big you're trying to get.
How do you balance out the possibility of like glycogenesis too, right? Isn't there like a case where protein turns itself into some kind of glucose if you have too much of it?
Yeah, I honestly, I think that's, unless you're doing it to like the extremes, I don't think you necessarily have to worry that. I don't think that the common person who's trying to just lower their carbs completely is going to need to worry about that. I think that that's kind of on the extreme side if you were to really drop things a lot. I mean, from everything's going to be amplified the more you're trying to get to that true like bodybuilding side and you're trying to put on serious mass or be seriously lean or those types of things. And that's when you can start to necessarily think about the adverse effects of that. But if you're going that extreme and you're just trying to get a little bit in shape, I would say you don't need to go to those levels. I think you can do what you need to do. I think they're probably pushing the time more than anything else, because I think people get a little bit impatient when it comes to results.
I'm with it, man. We'll get jacked. I'm a fan. Oh, gosh. What else you got, Barbary?
Is these spaces with Ox in like 20 minutes. So this account, the Pablo account with 80,000 followers that converted to BowTiedBULLY and has an avatar.
Yeah, he retweeted you.
Yeah, well, he and I have been DMing the last like 20 minutes or so. And he said, I'm basically selling him on trying to come on Ox's space. And he said he wants to. This is before I told, yo, mate, sounds good. When's that happening? So we'll see. But, and of course, Cerno and Ox know each other. So it's proof of concept. Like yesterday, Sponge did the first spaces. He did the first podcast. And you're seeing engagement. You're seeing tax advice. You're seeing Bully come alive and talk about his background and,
oh yeah, I invited.
How to not be a single guy in the kitchen and actually cook a good meal. It's coming alive. It's insane.
Yeah, no, it's pretty exciting. I invited Pablo onto my podcast, so we'll see if he responds. Hopefully, that'll be good. Yeah, if he comes down to the spaces tonight, then maybe he'll come through. Tax advisors coming through too. That's going to be really good. I got Katinga tomorrow. Katinga is going to be dope. I'm excited for Katinga.
It's crazy how fast it's getting in terms of, it's almost like we were just speeding past the proof of concept stage where things like take like a year or 2 years to get to that stage. But I think everyone is like been around for like a month or 2 months now. It's like, okay, this is actually a thing. Like this is happening. And I think everyone's starting to get more comfortable in terms of putting themselves out there and actually being more engaging, whether or not they're producing content or just getting on a spaces or getting on a podcast or something. I think it's kind of crazy how just the speed of everything, which kind of shows the appetite that was there, that bull kind of.
I mean, I'm going to be honest. I'm kind of surprised it didn't happen sooner. Like, because I mean, I've only been in this like arena, so to speak, for like a couple of weeks or so, and you know, there's been an appetite for this stuff like from day one. So like the fact that like I had the first podcast, you know, a few days ago with Barbary, I'm kind of surprised it. Sorry,
it's kind of silly. It's like
yeah,
and Ox were talking about this first week of May. They had already been talking about it.
I mean, I wasn't going to call it out like that, but okay. All right.
Well, it's what Paul was talking about 2 days ago. He goes, "There's no such thing as an original idea. There's original execution." Yeah,
no, he's right, but that's the thing. I mean, like everyone should be doing this sort of thing constantly. Like there's no like, it's not like there's so few jungle animals and so few topics that we're all gonna have to like fight over them or something. Like we should be having like 15 podcasts a night simultaneously, and everyone just like finds whatever one they feel like, you know, like. And the spaces, I think, are going to offer that opportunity. That's going to be nice because it's already integrated into Twitter. That's going to be great because people can like pop in and out. Oxus thing tonight's going to be huge. That one's going to be really huge. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one. I think also like at the beginning, I think the reason why it's taking a little bit longer is, I don't know if y'all have noticed, at least at the beginning, I think every animal under the sun the first like week was starting to get taken up. And then you saw them go to like 0 followers or following 0 people or what have you. So I think people kind of got excited at first, but didn't really know how to go about doing things. And then they just kind of fell by the wayside. But I think after that, this next kind of wave of people who made their avatars and made their different animals within the jungle, they actually kind of realized what the vision was going to be. And that's where all this content and all this stuff has really started to accelerate.
And we've seen conversions where it's an account that's not original 0 day one, it's the tax guy, it's Pablo, it's people converting existing Twitter accounts to the jungle. Last piece I want to touch on, Bully, is Ox was mentioning a platform he's building with Monkey on, I think it's health and wellness, fitness, but I'm kind of really curious because some accounts, myself included, on a little bit on what to eat, but it's mostly on how to get yoked. But no one's talking about foods to cook, how to cook them, and this really the science, the art of the kitchen. So I'm kind of like year or 2 years out. You've seen the jungle is moving fast. Where would you like to be if you were making money doing what you want to do, online, offline? What is it in your interests, your brand, your hobbies, would you like to be able to do for a living?
Yeah, I mean that's a good one right there. I mean, I've always loved I don't know how popular around where you all are, they are, but I've seen kind of different like meal prep companies or different things about then like the local area.
Factor. There's like Freshly. There's a whole bunch of them. Yeah,
those types of ones, but like. There's also like the smaller local ones that might be more bodybuilding or gym specific ones. But I think like to me, there's so much creativity that you can have with meals, and people don't eat well because they don't know how to make things not boring. And to me, like I would just find so much enjoyment out of just making creative different ways for people to get in their macros the right way, or just eat different ways, whether it be a keto diet or high carb diet, like whatever they want, just making it like delicious or unique and not necessarily boring, because people, for the most part, the average person is not going to be able to eat boring meals for the most part. So, I mean, I would, to me, like that would be, if I was the official meal prep company of the jungle, and I would be very, very happy with that.
I don't know, Bully. You're going to have to compete with my 5 wives from Kyrgyzstan that I'm going to have competing amongst themselves to see who's the top wife by giving me the best food. You never know.
Well, I'll have them have my recipes. I'll have to pay for my recipes, and then they can just make it for you. So I'll just make it that way as well.
I like it. Make them all fight with the same resources. Even playing fields, equal opportunity, unequal results. I'm a fan.
Or you could compare the same one across all of them and figure out who the best actually is.
Ooh, there we go. I like it. I like where this is going.
All right. I'm going to, well, of course, we're probably going to jump on the spaces a little bit. Wrap it up. Any kind of lasting comments, questions, takeaways from conversation?
Nah,
How about one improve for next time? For next, whoever that is, you, me, Bully, whatever. Or Sponge, Bully, myself. One improve.
One improve. Maybe, I don't know, maybe have like either a project or a coin or like one thing specific that you wanted to maybe touch base with them about, like in terms of maybe not even a coin, just like if their Substack, just like one article that they did or something that they can just like go either in more in depth that they didn't get to hit or something like that. Just like one piece of like focused information that like they can just kind of expand on to see if they didn't get out what they wanted to in it. Like maybe they just kind of fell short in terms of what they wanted to communicate, or they just have a lot more to say about it than they could get on the paper.
Specificity.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, specificity. Cool.
I haven't improved. How about we improve the part where we fix the link that goes onto Twitter?
Yeah.
I think we can improve that one real quick.
Amateur hour. One, sustain like something that's a good setup or exceeded expectations.
What was the question?
It's something that like exceeded expectations, or you would do again.
Robert,
like for me, that was having.
Robert, my expectations of you are so low, you exceed them every time.
Oh, hell yeah.
I love you, buddy.
Keep the bar low. I'll raise that bitch every time.
For me, I mean, I always love conversation formats. I mean, I love just going in there and like, obviously we have the talking points and everything like that, but I mean, just letting the conversation flow where it is. I mean, that's for me, that's what I like listening to and like what I like talking, at least that kind of style. So, I mean, that's what I really enjoyed. I like the way they flowed and kind of seemed pretty seamless to me.
Right. I do like Sponge, I appreciate you jumping in. Like long run, I want to get it from podcasts, and most mainstream podcasts are like one-on-one. Almost they feel like an interview, even though it's like a dialogue. And getting it to this more intellectual sparring, like debating between different people, having conversations in groups, almost like the Discord chat, but a little more organized and not having like so many people. Is just like uncontrolled.
Yeah, man.
For sure.
But BowTiedBULLY, thanks for jumping on today with an episode of Degens, and Sponge making a surprise appearance. BowTiedBULLY, Substack, cooking and traveling, and more to come. That's all, folks.
Appreciate it, man.
Let's go to that space.
Appreciate you having me on. More than happy to be on whenever you need me to.
Absolutely. Thanks, buddy.
See you guys later.